You're in charge of children's safety at a high school. What happens to you when 10 of them are shot and 4 die? Find out today on The 10th Man. The parents of Ethan Crumley are in jail. They're accused of bad financial management, owning horses, family dysfunction, and contrived offenses which allegedly caused a targeted attack. But the administrators of Oxford schools have been shown in violation of written policies by an investigation. A biased investigation, paid for by the school's own law firm, after the school refused free help from the state, nevertheless exposed negligence by the school. Although the investigators promised a conclusion showing the shooting was the fault of the parents, all the facts coming to light showed the school failed to follow its own policies, standard policies based upon school security practices established by the U.S. government. What punishment have school staff received for these real infractions? On November 30th, 2021, the shooter was called to the school office not as a danger to others, but for ideation. It's a common problem at this school, as shown in the first video of this series. Watch them here or uncensored on Rumble. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see them all. They tend to be shadow banned. Mom and Dad were called in and told to get the boy into therapy soon. They agreed, and he went back to class. Later that day, he killed 4 schoolmates and wounded 7 other people. From that point forward, the school, the media, and the legal system have all pretended that the meeting was a chance to avert danger not to the shooter himself, but to the school, although the people are not fooled. The community has demanded accountability, but a judge said you can only prosecute the person who actually pulled the trigger. So there's no legal action being taken against the school employees. So what did happen to the employees, if anything? How did they fail, and what were the consequences? Every school in America has these reports from the United States Department of Homeland Security. Gun owners are often asked in accusing tones, if guns are not the problem, then how would you stop school shootings? They calmly reply by following these documents and putting people in jail if they don't. The documents are clear. Schools need to do threat assessments and intervention. Contrary to what we all think, there's no shooter's profile that the parents or anyone else could detect. Some shooters are loners and misfits, others are popular kids. And while there's no identity, there are behaviors where shooters always give off clues to their intentions. Always. Threat behaviors are what you look for. But Oxford schools had no threat assessment team, no defined threatening behaviors, and no reporting thresholds. Oxford schools did have an intervention policy, but they never published it, they never assigned anyone to distribute it, and none of the people who might be blamed now had any idea that it existed. Here are the details, person by person. First, the parents. Obviously, the shooter's parents committed no crimes, and we've covered that. Beyond that, the protocols expect all parents to be involved in threat assessment and to have awareness of the policy, of bully prevention, etc. Oxford schools didn't train the Crumleys or any parents, and some of those untrained parents either have bullies for children themselves or witness threatening behavior. That's how it works. Maybe those parents should be the ones in jail. There are 2 counselors who were punished with the loss of their jobs. Hopkins and Ejak were the 2 guys who interviewed the shooter on the day of the shooting. People are calling for their heads, but in reality, they broke no laws or school policy, either one, instead doing their jobs exactly as defined by the school. There was no school requirement to do a threat assessment, and other expert counselors have said they would not have seen a threat either. Still, they were punished. Actually, it appears that all the school's counselors were replaced, all but one anyway. While Hopkins and Ejak were slightly punished without being officially blamed, 3 other people were blamed without being punished. These were the 3 higher-ups who were supposedly responsible for not implementing the school's threat assessment policy. These 3 were Throne, Sweat, and Lamond. How can all 3 be to blame? Throne was the superintendent, Sweat and Lamond were his assistants. Throne's job was to make sure that someone, possibly Sweat or Lamond, put a plan in place. But blaming 3 people still makes no sense. Either Throne ordered it done and one, not both, of them failed, or he never ordered it done and he failed. So what's going on here with 3 people blamed? According to the investigation, 2 of these people were not even interviewed. No surprise, nearly half of the school staff refused to participate in the investigation, an option not extended to the Crumleys. Further, none of the people who did participate took any ownership of the threat assessment process. So the investigators went 1 potato, 2 potato, and landed on Throne, Sweat, and Lamond. That's a career ender for those 3, right? Well, not really. The bought and paid for investigation carefully selected 3 people to blame without actually punishing them. You see, Sweat had retired months and months before the shooting took place. She's enjoying her golden years. You'd refuse to be interviewed too. She probably didn't even answer the phone. Throne, similarly, had announced his planned retirement more than a month before the shooting, citing all the stress the COVID shutdowns had put on him, an important factor also in the mood of the shooter, per the investigation. Throne stayed on temporarily, but he too was long gone when the results were released. As for Lamond, she didn't retire, but she was gone as well. In an amazing coincidence, she had taken a new job by the time the investigation was released. She's now the training director with the contractor that supplied weapons detection equipment to the school. Too little, too late. Just some of the free stuff you get. Guidepost Solutions made their whitewashing too obvious. They should have just blamed one person and it would have looked better. Instead, these investigators surgically identified the 3 people whom they could blame without adversely impacting them in any practical sense. And then there's Fine. Not blamed and not punished, she's still working at the school, the only member of the counseling staff still there. Odd. The bully prevention coordinator, she's the single school officer whose defined role could have kept the situation from boiling over in the first place, had she not been distracted from her job. Not a collateral role like with the counselors, but her full-time job. Student shooters always act on grievances against their classmates and against bullying much of the time, most of the time. Yet, Fine was not penalized in any way despite Oxford's grim history and despite the fact 2 of the 10 student victims targeted by the shooter were members of her team. When parents asked if she had met with the shooter, the school said, no, it was 2 other counselors meeting with him on November 30th. That's a true but odd response. She was one of the pair meeting with him the day before. How ignorant we can be. Watching while the authorities punish gun owners who mind their own business and counselors who just do their jobs. There's nothing in the Homeland Security guidelines that points to gun laws as a solution or gun owners as a problem, but that's the first place the politicians look. Remember, they never promise more safety. They only promise more gun laws. Useless gun laws and winning election will be covered again soon here on The 10th Man.